All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Don Ficken. I'm with the St. Louis Astronomical Society and the Astronomical Society of Eastern Missouri. We're based in St. Louis, and I'm part of a larger task force, actually nationwide, in fact, a global task force that is trying to grow the Library Telescope program, and also we meet every month to share best practices. Excited tonight to bring you our monthly program. We've been having programs each month. In fact, the last month we had one on the library in Missouri. The library share their experiences. And 1 second here. And the library share their experiences. And that's on a YouTube recording. If you go out to our website, if you can find that, it'll be there's a YouTube button up there, and you can click and you can see an entire library of actually prior programs, and also some really helpful programs about how to use the telescope. Next month, we're going to have a really interesting one. If you've had the library telescope for a while, you probably have learned that there's some things that don't always work perfectly. And we've got a whole team that's been working together, and they've been thinking up what we call hacks and fixes of the telescope that are some as simple as tape and some a little bit more complicated. But we're going to try to share those in one quick program next month, and I think it'll be kind of fun. But tonight, what I'd like to talk about is, actually, I'm very excited. This program is called Navigating the Night Sky with Stellarium. Rich Pfefferman will be our presenter. He's part of the St. Louis Astronomical Society. I work with Rich on many virtual programs, and he does such a really nice job of Stellarium that I ask him to share what he does with you. And if you're a new person with stars, you will find that what he's going to help you will simply help you navigate the night sky. But for a lot of us, it's just really the power of Stellarium is amazing to me, what you can do with it. There's both a free version you can download on your desktop and also a free version as you go to web. And I think there's a paid version that you can put on your Android or iPhone. So he's going to go through the night sky tonight, talk about what you can do, what you can see, and I think you're going to have fun with this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich and let him share his screen, and let's get our program going. And thanks, Rich, by the way, for joining us tonight.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks to you, Don, and to Tom. Again, great to do this. It's always a lot of fun. Anyways, my name is Rich Pfefferman. I've been a member of the St. Louis Astronomical Society for a long time, and I don't want to date myself, but like a lot of people, I became interested in astronomy, really with the space program, the Apollo and Gemini missions of the 60s. My parents let me stay up late to see the moon landing on July 20th of 69. Of course, the 52nd anniversary was just yesterday. And really, astronomy has been my main hobby ever since. I got my first telescope when I was 9 years old. And in recent years, my main interest in astronomy has been in the field of astronomy education. Now, one of the best ways to learn the sky is with the help of computer software. I didn't have that luxury when I was a kid, but it's a great tool to have. And there's lots of computer programs out there that you could buy or, of course, download for free online. In the last year or so, I've become pretty familiar with Stellarium, and that's my favorite, but there's certainly plenty of other ones out there. So for the rest of my time, I'm going to take you on a tour of the night sky, and I'm going to try to show off some of the things you can do with Stellarium as well. So I'm going to share now, and hopefully it will work. There we go. Does that look okay? Looks like it does. All right, very good. Now, with Stellarium, you could set your location pretty much to anywhere in the world. You can set the date and time backwards in history, forwards in history. Right now, I have it set for about an hour after sunset St. Louis time. I actually want to go back just a little bit to show you the view closer to sunset. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is move backwards in time a little bit. And as we do that, you will see Venus coming into view, backing up in the sky. So the Earth is rotating backwards for a moment. Okay, right about here will be good. And so this is the view about a half hour after sunset St. Louis time. It's just starting to get a little bit dark, a few stars visible. And when you stargaze, it's often good to start in the west. And that's because as the Earth rotates, the objects in the west are going to set first. They're going to get lower and lower and hard to see. So if you're taking a tour of the whole sky, it's often best to start in the west. Now, our main planet in the west is currently Venus. And Venus is actually riding rather low in the sky, as you can see here. So if you want to see it yourself, you want to find a spot with an open view to the horizon. Now, with a small telescope right now, Venus does not show very much. It's on the far side of its orbit from Earth, so it does not show very much. So it's like a tiny, brilliant, full disk. But if you look very closely, and I'm going to scroll in a little bit, magnify just a little bit more, you're going to see a star right next to Venus tonight. And that's actually the star Regulus, and Venus is passing Regulus. In fact, tonight is the closest night to see that. Since Regulus is a lot dimmer than Venus, and you're looking at a twilight background, if you can, you might want to bring a pair of binoculars with you in order to spot Regulus. A harder challenge is to the lower right of Venus and Regulus, and that's actually in a tree from this view. So I have the luxury of getting rid of that tree and pretending that we have a completely open view to the horizon like that, and you can see dim, tiny Mars to the lower right of Venus. And you will probably need binoculars almost for sure to see Mars. If any of you remember back to last fall, Mars was very, very bright, not that much dimmer than Venus, but now it's faded like 60-fold. So it's not very well seen, but you might catch a glimpse of it with binoculars if you scan to the lower right of Venus and Regulus. Now, the other thing we can do is to show you what's going to happen over the next few nights as Venus and Mars move. So we're going to recreate this. This is the view tonight, and we're going to move ahead. Tomorrow night, you could see that Venus has moved past Regulus, and with each night, Venus leaves them behind. Also notice that Regulus and Mars are dropping towards the horizon with each night because they're appearing on the far side of the sun. And probably by the end of July, you won't be able to see either one of them anymore. Here's July 28th, a week from now, and they've dropped quite a bit towards the horizon. But if you look tonight or the next few nights, you might catch Regulus and Mars near Venus. All right, we'll go back to tonight's position though, and we'll see what else we could spot. We're going to direct our attention now to the northern part of the sky, and I'll put our horizon back, our landscape, and we'll move north. By the way, you can select various landscapes in Stellarium, find one that's near your own, and if you're very technically skilled, which I am not, you could even create your own panorama of the horizon, although that's definitely beyond me. All right, here we go. As you face north, the familiar pattern of stars of the Big Dipper is visible, and most people are familiar with it, the three stars forming the bowl, the handle, and the four forming the bowl. And you'll notice, and this is very accurate, that the star that joins the bowl and the handle together is quite a bit dimmer. And if you live close to a big city or it's not very clear or bright moon, in St. Louis, we have a lot of haze. There's a lot of smoke from the fires in the west, so our sky is really quite hazy. And between that and the full moon, I don't know how well you'd actually see some of these stars tonight. But Big Dipper is easy to locate, and most people know it. And back in Cub Scouts a long time ago, they taught me that the two stars in the Big Dipper's bowl that are farthest from the handle, if you draw a line through them, they point to the North Star, which is also called Polaris. Now, the North Star is special. As many people know, if you draw a line from the center of the Earth out into space through the North Pole, it points very closely to Polaris, which is a pretty bright, we call it a second magnitude star. It is not the brightest star in the sky, but it is fairly bright, about equal to the stars in the Big Dipper. And the cool thing is that since Polaris is located directly above the Earth's axis, it means as the Earth turns, the whole sky seems to revolve around Polaris. And that's too good a thing to pass up. So I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to draw in the lines for the constellations to help you see it better. The stars of the Little Dipper come upward from Polaris, and they're much dimmer. Maybe these two stars, the Guardians, you may be able to spot from most locations. But the thing to watch for once I start the rotation in just a minute is that this group of stars called Cassiopeia, looks like a W, is currently very low in the sky. But notice how it's on the opposite side of the Polaris from the Big Dipper. So let's see what happens as we start the rotation. Right now we're about 9:15 St. Louis time. I'm going to speed it up a little. There we go, give you an idea. As the night wears on, the Big Dipper drops, Cassiopeia rises, but notice they're on opposite sides of the North Star from each other. So this is a really good way to illustrate how the sky works, how Earth's rotation takes place. Right now we're looking at 2:06 in the morning. And so if you're a night owl, by then, the Cassiopeia is a much better way to find the North Star because the Big Dipper is quite low in the sky. But no matter when you look, these two stars in the bowl farthest from the handle always point to the North Star. All right, I'm going to revert back, go back a few hours, and I'll do it the quick way now. And as we look, you could see that the stars in the Big Dipper can help us locate a couple of what we call first magnitude stars. These are the 25 or so brightest stars in the sky. And you could follow the arc of the Big Dipper's handle to identify Arcturus. So arc to Arcturus from the handle of the Big Dipper. It's quite bright, one of the brightest stars in the sky. And then you can speed on, or some say spike, to Spica. So you arc to Arcturus and speed on or spike to Spica. And that's not labeled, but this is Spica. Now, when you look at them in the real sky, you'll notice they're decidedly different colors. Arcturus looks kind of yellowish orange. Spica kind of white tinged a little bit with blue. And star colors are due to temperatures. If you light a match, the hottest part of the flame right by the wick is blue, then white, yellow, orange, red. So this tells you that Spica is a hotter star than Arcturus, yet Arcturus is brighter. So that tells you that Spica must be a lot farther away. In fact, the light from Spica left just before the time of the American Revolution, around the year 1760, to get to your eye. It's a relatively distant star, while Arcturus is pretty close at 37 light years away. So there's a couple of easily identifiable things that can find. So arc to Arcturus, and then spike or speed on to Spica. We'll head south. And of course, this evening, the moon is probably the most brilliant, most outstanding object in the sky. The shape of the moon tonight is what we call gibbous. If you don't look very closely, you might just say it's a full moon, but look close and it has a distinct hump shape. And the library telescopes or even binoculars or any small telescope will give you a view sort of like this of the moon. This would be the view at about 25 power, which is roughly the power of the library telescopes. And you could really see the lava plains. They're called mare. And then there along the edge of the moon, you can see lots of craters. You get a really good view. And this is a good time to look. Many people love to look at the moon when it's full. Actually, I don't think it looks as good when the moon is completely full because a lot of these details are best seen at the edge. We call it the terminator, where the light and dark sides come together, and the moon looks kind of all washed out when it's completely full. All right, so there we go with the moon. The moon happens to be in the middle of an interesting area tonight, a couple of my favorite constellations. And so what I'm going to do is move ahead in time a few days because actually the glare of the moon would make it very hard to find Sagittarius and Scorpius tonight. So you can see where the moon is located tonight. And then tomorrow night, it's going to be over there and there and there. You can see how Earth, as the moon revolves around the Earth, how it moves off. And so the 25th, 4 nights from now, it'll be safely out of the way. Now, the bright star that was to the right of the moon tonight, its name is Antares, and it's the heart of the scorpion in the sky. Now, this is one of the few constellations that actually looks something like what it's named after. These 3 stars form the claws. Antares is the heart. And then from the northern part of the United States, it's pretty hard to locate the bottom stars in the scorpion's body. You might need to bring binoculars along. If you're in the southern US, it's easier. From St. Louis, you usually need binoculars to see these stars at the bottom. And then it curves up, and then there's a really cool close pair of stars that has a nickname of the cat's eyes, and they form the scorpion's stinger. And that's the Scorpius is a pretty impressive group. Now, the next group to the left are the stars of Sagittarius, the archer. But I never have been able to see any sort of archer here. What I see is a teapot. These stars form the lid, these the spout, and these the handle. And that's a pretty distinct group that can be seen. Again, you might need a fairly dark sky, or even binoculars can help bring out some of the dimmer stars if you have too many city lights or haze. Now, one other thing this program can do, I am showing a view with moderate light pollution right now, and I can adjust that to create a much darker sky. And I just wish it was so easy to do that in real life by pressing a button. Because it so happens that Scorpius and Sagittarius are in the direction of the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And if you're lucky enough to get to a dark sky location on a good clear dark night with not too much moonlight, you can get a view like this. Move my panel out of the way. The band of the Milky Way goes through the sky. I'm going to scroll out and you can actually see it really goes through the entire sky, but the brightest portion is near Sagittarius and Scorpius in the south. So this program you can adjust the brilliance of the sky to reflect your level of light pollution. To be honest, folks, if I adjusted the program for the true level of light pollution, let's say near the Gateway Arch in downtown St. Louis, only a handful of stars would be visible and really almost no constellation. So even before we turn the darkness up, we were being a little bit optimistic. But a beautiful view, and Stellarium does show you how you can find the Milky Way. If you have binoculars or one of the library telescopes, any small telescope, and you have access to this dark sky, just kind of cruise along the band of the Milky Way, you'll just see innumerable numbers of stars. Really cool. As we shift to the east, a very impressive group of stars there's actually three bright stars, the famous and huge summer triangle. Vega is very high up in the east at this time of year. It's the brightest of the three. Deneb and Altair, these three will be visible for the next several months, and a very distinct group of stars, the summer triangle, can be seen. Vega is a relatively near star at 25 light years away. Altair about 16 light years. So both of them are pretty close to Earth. Deneb, even though it looks the dimmest of the three, is about 1,500 light years away. It's one of the most distant stars you can see to your unaided eye. And it's got to be tremendously luminous to be that bright at that distance. I always like to include a myth about the sky. And my favorite myth at this time of year involves the stars around Vega. They form the constellation of Lyra the Harp. To me, it looks like a little parallelogram or rectangle around Vega. But I guess with a lot of imagination, you could make a harp or anything you want. The ancients, of course, had lots of time and much less on their minds, and they developed all of the sky lore that's so famous. But we could recreate that ourselves just by doing this with the program. There we go. We could see that the stars around Deneb form a swan. The stars around Altair form an eagle. And the stars around Vega form a harp or lyre. And the lyre belonged to Orpheus, who was a great ancient musician. And the story goes that his beloved, his wife Eurydice, unfortunately, she went for a walk, happened to step on a snake who bit her, and she died. Now, Orpheus was grief-stricken, but he realized, hey, maybe I could use my special talent with my harp. Maybe I can go down to the underworld and talk to Hades, and maybe I could convince him to let Eurydice come back from the dead. So that's what Orpheus did. He went down to the underworld and he did his thing for Hades. His beautiful music melted Hades' ice cold heart, and Hades agreed to let Eurydice go on one condition. And the condition was that Orpheus must not look back at her until they had both left the portal of the underworld. So they started back, but Eurydice kept silent, and Orpheus started to wonder if she was really still following him. So eventually he couldn't resist the temptation anymore, and just before leaving the portal of the underworld, he turned around and looked back at Eurydice, only to see her snatched away for good. It's a sad, depressing story, and of course you probably heard it before in other forms of the media, but it starts with ancient Greek mythology. So lots of stories in the sky, and by the way, the Stellarium program can show images not just of Greek, but many other cultures. A few months ago on my program, I talked about the canoe baler of Makali, which is a Hawaiian and Polynesian myth, and I was able to use Stellarium to talk about that. So not just the mythology that most of us in the West are familiar with. All right, we're nearly done here. I want to show you a couple of planets. We saw, of course, Venus and Mars at the very beginning. Let me move back to tonight's date. Put the moon back where it should be. And if you stay up to about 10 o'clock tonight, St. Louis time, your local time might be slightly different, you will see Jupiter and Saturn rising in the southeastern sky. Saturn is an hour or so ahead of Jupiter, but by about 10 or 10:30, you should be able to see both of them if you have an open view. And of course, Saturn and Jupiter are really cool objects to see in a telescope. I'm going to bring up an enlarged view of Saturn now. Scroll in just a little bit. This might be about like what you can get with the library telescopes. You can get a trace of Saturn's rings. And then with a larger telescope, you can see even more, including several of Saturn's moons. If you took a poll of people, I suspect most people's favorite object would either be the moon or Saturn. And then the third place object, of course, would be Jupiter, which we'll go to now. There we go. Again, with this program, you can simulate magnified views or naked eye size views. Jupiter has 4 very large moons that if Jupiter itself weren't so bright, you could see them with your unaided eye. You could spot usually a couple of them in good binoculars, and generally there's 4 large ones that you could see in a small telescope. 4 large moons. They were discovered by Galileo in the 17th century, so they're called the Galilean moons, and they're usually in some combination, 2 on one side of Jupiter, 2 on the other, could be 3 on one side, all 4 on the same side. Sometimes 1 or 2 of them could be in front of Jupiter or behind it. So it's fascinating to follow the adventures of Jupiter's moons. With a slightly higher magnifying power, you can start to make out some cloud bands or stripes on Jupiter. Those are areas of rising and falling gases, and you could see them in a rather small telescope, but with a slightly higher magnifying power. All right, the last thing I want to show you is to demonstrate the capabilities of Stellarium once again. Remember, here is Jupiter, and then there is Saturn, and we're going to simulate the Earth's rotation for the rest of the night and see what happens to these stars. Right now, about 9:30, it's actually 10:30 it's set for. And you can see how Jupiter and Saturn rise higher and then out of the view. New stars constantly appear in the east. And eventually, you get to see dawn rising with this program. Some of the winter stars coming into view now just before dawn. And then here is the twilight. So folks, thank you. Enjoyed doing the program. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Rich. That was really cool. I think it demonstrates some of the nice features. I will say that when I first ran across Stellarium, I wasn't particularly that impressed because I was using some pretty fancy apps, but I've really fallen in love with it. It's really very powerful. And if you're wanting to learn, just to say, explore the night sky, it's a really great way. You can pull up, you can either install a desktop version of it, or there's even a web-based Stellarium version of it. And we haven't really even shown all the capabilities here because I have some telescopes and it will actually run the telescopes too. If you connect a cable from your desktop or your laptop to your telescope, if it's capable, then it'll actually run it. So it's pretty good. So let's see if we have any questions coming up from the group here. If you have questions, and if you're joining us, we're finishing up actually a program called Navigating the Night Sky with Stellarium with Rich Pfefferman in St. Louis. He is giving us some ideas about how Stellarium works and giving us some good examples of navigating the night sky. You can see him spinning around everything. And so what kind of questions, if you have, put them in the comments box if you're on Facebook, or in the chat box or Q&A box if you're on Zoom here. So Rich, was this a desktop version or was this a web version of Stellarium that you were using?
Downloaded from the web.
Okay, so you installed this, right?
Yes.
All right, so we got a question popping up here. I heard something about projecting the program onto ceiling. Does it work good? In other words, are you able to make a planetarium program out of this?
I have never tried. I couldn't say that.
So I know that we have done, if you do a large screen projection, if you take a laptop and you hook a projector up to it, it'll project a good size. It's not necessarily set up to be a planetarium program in that sense, although it could have some capabilities that I don't understand. But I can see this if you're a library and you're wanting to do an inside program. Obviously, you could certainly bring 50 laptops and have everybody go through it. But what's really nice is you can bring this up on a large screen and you can demonstrate just exactly what we've done here, except on a big screen, and teach the basics about the night sky. And because it's so simple, I mean, very quickly you'll pick up how it really works, and that's really great. All right, so we got that questions. Let's see if we have any more questions here. All right. So Rich, can you go forward more than just a couple of days here? Are you able to go forward to, say, a few years from now, for example?
You can go, I don't know exactly, but you can go very, very far in history. I thought about going back to the time of the total eclipse of the sun, which was visible from very close to St. Louis, to show that. And yes, you can go backwards and forwards in history a long time. I don't know the exact amount, but quite far.
And if I'm correct, you could change your location. If let's say that you're going on a trip, let's say I'm in St. Louis and I want to go to New Mexico, I could change my location to New Mexico before I ever get there and explore what I'll be able to see that night from that horizon. Is that right?
Yes, you certainly can. And when I went down to Florida a few months ago, I did some study with Stellarium as seen from southern Florida, where you can start to pick up some things like the Southern Cross and other constellations.
And I believe that you can actually put some, you can make the view, I believe you can bring up like a circle, right? And you can actually show what it would look like through a telescope. And I have a question here about what about finding deep space objects? Could you go through that? Can you show us a little bit about finding deep sky objects, if you could?
Yes, I could put the I could reset it for daytime, for nighttime, and go show some deep sky objects, certainly.
So is there a lookup for the deeper sky objects where you can find the Messiers and all that type of thing here?
Yes, you could bring up the you could put the deep sky objects on the on here. Let's see if I can do that. I haven't. I typically deal in naked eye viewing, but you certainly can. You certainly could put these on there, and let's see if I put some on there. Have lots of stars now, certainly, and I can put the constellation lines that can help you locate objects. Okay, here we go. This view shows how you can find the Andromeda galaxy and just follow the line of stars in the constellation of Andromeda. The Andromeda galaxy is actually dimly visible to the unaided eye if you have a very dark location. It's one of the most distant objects that the human eye can see. So you can certainly locate a number of deep sky objects depending on your settings. You can actually bring out tons of them with that. I believe this is another one.
Are you able to label those, Rich? Do you know if you can label those?
Yes, I could. Yes, you could put that on there. I can also just click on the Andromeda galaxy. Now here it identifies it. You could also put labels on the program.
Can you show us how that works if you have time?
Sure. I believe I set the labels very limited at the beginning of the program, so that we didn't want it to be all cluttered up with lots of things, so we could figure out what we were doing there.
I think is that the label and markers on your right there that you got to click that box?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so now, yeah, there you go. Now we got tons of them.
Yeah, right.
So we got the Andromeda Galaxy. There are 2 satellite galaxies next to it, and it identifies many of them by catalog number, the index catalog, some of them by popular names that they have them. Yes, it's a good, useful uh, uh, catalog, a good method to identify deep sky objects.
So there's a question here, is Stellarium Plus an official app for the iPad? I believe it is. I think it's a couple dollars. I haven't looked up recently, but I know that you can get the full version of Stellarium on Android and the iPad. It's really pretty nice. I actually use a different one, so I haven't really purchased that, but I believe it has the same capabilities.
Hey guys, we got a couple of questions on Facebook. One of them is Stellarium something that is commonly used, or are there other more preferred tools to use? Are there better tools? I guess, well, we'll leave it to you guys to answer that.
So I didn't hear the question exactly, Tom.
So are there other, is Stellarium a preferred tool to use, or are there other better tools out there?
Yeah, actually, I think I'll try to answer that one. Stellarium is one of the tools. Well, the reason I like it, it's free and there's a web version of it. But Sky and Telescope has some great, if you go to their website, there's some really great apps. I personally use Sky Safari for what I'm doing, some really deep, that's about a $40 app on the iPad, but it's really powerful, does a lot of great stuff. And I like Star Walk, that's pretty good. I like the graphics of those. But Stellarium, there's Skyview Lite. Usually, if I have a cloudy night with a star party, I'll bring my older iPad and I'll let the children go through, and I got a whole page full of apps, and they'll go through all of them, and they love them all. There's even some on the moon, Mars specifically. There's a lot of really that you go out here. So this Stellarium is an example of what you can do with some of these apps, but there's a lot of them and you have a lot of choices. And we're not saying this is one better over another one, but I like it, the fact it's free on the web and free, and it's really powerful, and it will drive telescopes if you happen to have a telescope through the ASCOM interfaces.
There's a free version, but is there also a paid version that is even better?
No, I don't think there's a paid version for Stellarium, at least on the desktop and the web. I believe that the iPad and Android have a paid version. You have to pay for that, I believe, to get it. But this is, again, this is pretty nice.
I think Stellarium is very well suited to like planetarium type tours, kind of like what I did. If you were, you could certainly use it as your sky atlas to locate deep sky objects if you have a good sized telescope. But I think some of the other apps might be better for that purpose.
All right, Tom, do you have any more questions on Facebook at all that you can see?
Nope, that's what I've gotten so far.
All right, fine. Well, we're going to probably have to wrap up here. We're actually, okay, so what is the little light moving around in the center?
This one right here.
Well, I'm not sure here.
There may have been a satellite that it does show satellites, including the International Space Station. Occasionally, you can program it to do meteors, sporadic meteors, or a meteor shower. So you can program it to have those in there as well.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting because we could be doing a live presentation and all of a sudden a satellite comes across and it's like, oh, we really didn't plan that in our presentation, but let's go ahead and talk about it while it's there. So the International Space Station, by the way, is fun to watch. You can use with the Elias website, you can look up and see when they're going to come over. All right, looks like we've covered the important stuff. Rich, I really thank you so much for doing a great job of presenting this. We only had limited time here to do this, but I think it shows some of the real examples of what you can do with a program like this. And if you're a library, it's a really great way to project to your audience and share together. And if you combine that with some of the other apps like SkyMap or something like that you could print out that could take something home. If you're just a novice, just bring it up and go to the web version. Don't have to install a single thing, just explore and have fun with it. So thanks again. We are going to we've recorded this and we will put this out to our YouTube library sometime tomorrow. And of course, you can always go to Facebook and you can stream it there. So thank you so much, Rich and Tom, for helping out tonight. And everybody have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.